Real accountability starts with abolishing ICE, impeaching Kristi Noem, and rethinking how we enforce immigration policy in this country.
Can I respond to that? Can I respond to that?
No.
Of course not. Look, you want to know why there's 50,000 people in detention? You want to know why we have 1 million illegal entries in the United States? You want to know why we have these issues? Because you have failed to secure the border. You have failed to work with this president to close the 3 loopholes we've asked for 2 years to close. So if you want to know why this issue exists, you need to look in the mirror. You have failed American people for not securing the border and closing loopholes.
Mr. Homan, please respect the chair and the authority of the chair. The time of the gentleman has expired.
What I am saying is common sense. You're a visitor. You're not even an American. You're a foreign national. You're here because we gave you a visa to be here temporarily, and now you're out there defending and supporting Hamas, a terrorist organization. You need to go.
At first glance, this sounded like another heated immigration exchange in Congress. But the reason it resonated is because it exposed a deeper argument about accountability. Ilhan Omar called for abolishing ICE, reflecting a broader progressive view that the agency has become too aggressive and too focused on detention over reform. But Tom Homan responded by shifting the focus back to Congress itself, arguing that ICE is enforcing laws lawmakers created and failed to update. And this is where the exchange became more significant than political theater. Homan's look in the mirror line landed because it reframed the debate around legislative responsibility, not just enforcement tactics. Critics of ICE are questioning the system's humanity, while supporters argue the real failure is years of unresolved border policy and loopholes Congress never addressed. At a policy level, both sides are pointing to real problems. One is raising concerns about enforcement and civil liberties. The other is arguing that weak enforcement creates instability and overwhelms the system. And that's ultimately why this moment gained traction. It wasn't just about one hearing. It exposed how divided Washington still is on what immigration enforcement should actually look like in practice. If you want political analysis that breaks down the substance behind the headlines, instead of just amplifying the outrage, this is where it happens.
Can I respond to that? Can I respond to that?
No.
Of course not.
I want to give you some time, but I do want to ask one quick question, and I want to make one quick statement. I find it very offensive that anybody would compare any federal employee, frankly, to someone who, the Gestapo or running Nazi concentration camps. That is very offensive. I have 15 seconds, and I yield it to you.
Thank you for saying that. I wish somebody in Democratic leadership would say that out loud. Look, you want to know why there's 50,000 people in detention? You want to know why we have 1 million illegal entries in the United States? You want to know why we have these issues? Because you have failed to secure the border. You have failed to work with this president to close the 3 loopholes we've asked for 2 years to close. So if you want to know why this issue exists, you need to look in the mirror. You have failed American people for not securing the border and closing loopholes.
Mr. Homan, please respect the chair and the authority of the chair. The time of the gentleman has expired.
I've asked you politely to let me go beyond my time, and you let other people go beyond their time, but not to Tom Homan. He don't get me go beyond his time.
Mr. Homan, we have approved an agreement between the Republicans and the Democrats with the ranking member. We increased the time of one witness, one member of Congress who was interrupted by a protest. That is done with the approval of the ranking member. Please respect the chair's authority.
I respect the chair's authority, but the chair...
Mr. Homan!
You work for me. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer. You work for me.
The witness will suspend.
The story that has never been successfully refuted, even though it's now a 5-year-old story, that's clearly a deportable offense. Is there an investigation into that?
You know, I just got advised by a fraud investigator the other day on that. I asked the question, who reviewed the file and says, there was immigration fraud involved. The statute of limitations became an issue in the last 4 years when this was first brought up.
Knowing all of that, here's Ilhan Omar on our immigration system under this president and the job that you're doing.
This is certainly not what the founding fathers of the American dream were thinking about when they said, that when they set out to write the Constitution.
What's your reaction to that?
Unlike the Biden administration, we're following the Constitution. We're enforcing the law. We're not ignoring the law. And you're right. The proper, assimilation is important, and it's going to be required. Not only that, when they come here on a legal program, they're required to be self-sufficient. They have to prove they're self-sufficient. So, so a lot of them, first thing they're doing to get here is get on the public dole. President Trump put his foot down, and like I said earlier, we're doing a deep dive on thousands and thousands of files, and we'll hold people accountable. And I'm so tired of them pulling the race card all the time,
right.
because we're doing this racist. ICE has arrested people from 180 different...
Trump mentioning the Daily Mail reporting from 2020 that Ilhan Omar married her brother to get into the country. This was last week. Take a listen.
Look at their nation. Look how bad their nation is. It's not even a nation. It's just people walking around killing each other. They've taken billions and billions of dollars. They have a representative, Ilhan Omar, who they say married her brother. It's a fraud.
Calls that a fraud. It's a story that has never been successfully refuted, even though it's now a 5-year-old story. That's clearly a deportable offense. Is there an investigation into that?
I just got advised by a fraud investigator the other day on that. I asked the question, who reviewed the file, and says, there was immigration fraud involved. The statute of limitations became an issue in the last 4 years when this was first brought up. Who was president? Who ran DOJ? So pulling the records now, pulling the files, and we're looking at it. But this fraud investigator, who I know personally, one of the best fraud investigators in HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, said there's no doubt he reviewed the file. So I'm running that down this week, matter of fact, and we'll see.
All right. This looked like another loud congressional confrontation. But once you get past the shouting and the interruptions, the exchange was really about something much bigger. Who Washington voters believe is actually responsible for the immigration system breaking down. Tom Homan's argument was blunt. Congress had years to address loopholes in immigration law, and according to him, lawmakers failed to act while border pressures kept growing. Supporters of that position see hearings like this as frustration finally boiling over, not just with the border situation itself, but with politicians publicly condemning outcomes they had the power to influence. But this is where the conversation gets more complicated. The excerpt also highlights something many people forget. Strong immigration enforcement didn't begin with one administration. Under Obama, deportations reached historically high levels, and detention capacity expanded significantly. That history matters because it challenges the idea that aggressive enforcement is entirely new or uniquely tied to one political party. And that's why this hearing hit such a nerve. Homan's "You work for me" line connected with viewers who feel government officials have become insulated from public frustration. To supporters, it sounded like a reminder that elected leaders are accountable to taxpayers. Critics, though, would argue the hearing interruptions and time limits were standard congressional procedure, not an effort to silence anyone. The exchange also moved into allegations surrounding Ilhan Omar, which added another layer of political tension. But this is where distinction matters. Allegations can drive headlines and political momentum, but they are not the same as verified findings. Questions about accountability only hold weight if they're backed by evidence and due process rather than speculation alone. And ultimately, that's why this moment spread so quickly online. It wasn't just a fight over ICE or border enforcement. It exposed a deeper divide over trust in government, consistency in immigration policy, and whether leaders are applying the same standards to everyone involved. If you want political analysis that cuts through the outrage and actually breaks down where the arguments hold up and where they don't, this is where it happens.